Hey, this is Chuck, and you are listening to Fans with Bands, the podcast where we talk to the fans and the bands they dig about life, music, and whatever the hell else we want to talk about. Today on Fans with Bands, we're talking to Brian from Halloween, the heavy metal horror show. Check it out. Hey, this is Chuck with Fans with Bands, and I'm talking to Brian, the lead vocalist for the legendary Halloween. How you doing, Brian?
Good, man. How you doing, Chuck?
I'm doing great. So I am. I was trying to think back. I think it might have been 1985 or maybe 86. I drove with some friends out to Rock of Ages in Garden City, and I picked up this cassette by a band called Halloween, and I was like, "Holy crap, this is fucking awesome!" And I think I got the vinyl around the same time or shortly after. But I've been a fan ever since.
Thank you. That's right about when it came out, too. The vinyl came out, I think, summer of '85.
Okay. Yeah.
There were a couple of cassette versions that came out first. We had a few stumbles trying to get it like professionally done, which still never happened. But we put it out first on like our own. We had a guy that our manager knew named LR, and he had a print shop, and it was taking too long, and we had already me jumping the gun. I had already announced, yeah, our new album's coming out, and then delays and problems, and just you know how the
Yeah.
business is. When you're a teenager, you don't know how the business is. And I'm up on stage holding stuff up and going, yeah, yeah, our album's coming out, and then it's going to be a year and whatnot. So we had to hurry up, and we went and we duplicated a bunch of cassette tapes and had this printer print out like a cassette jacket or whatever,
Yeah.
and we put that out. There's a bunch of those floating around. I guess they go for some serious money nowadays because there was only a couple hundred of them made. But that
Oh
was
shit.
just our attempt to keep from looking like liars. And then the actual vinyl came out, and there was a delay on the official cassette release. So that came out like I think that was like probably another 6 8 months after the vinyl came out.
Oh really? Oh, crazy.
We
Crazy.
we were always trying to save a dollar because we were broke ass, rock and roll guys, and saving a dollar sometimes cost us more in headache than it was worth.
Right. So Halloween celebrated 40 years this year, right?
Can you believe it?
I know.
I can't believe I've been alive 40 years. I'm like a teenager going on.
I think it's amazing. I mean, uh, the music that you guys have created over those 40 years is timeless. I mean, I still regularly listen to Dope Metal with Evil. Still check out, No One Gets Out. Still, and then go into the newer stuff that you guys have. I think what was it? Territory.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh my God. The new mix of territory is. I'm finally. I mean, I know that around the world people love Don't Meddle with Evil, and me being very self-critical, I know that we did it on a really tight budget, and we didn't know what the hell we were doing. And like when people tell me that they love it, I'm confused because I listen to the quality of it, and I think, oh my God, like heavy metal is supposed to like punch you in the face, and
yeah.
and I feel like it didn't get the proper production. And I mean, me and George go around and around, not really arguing, but kind of sparring over me wanting to redo that album with modern technology and with the balls that it could have. I love every song on the album. I
Yeah.
think they're great songs, but I just feel like it needs to have a little more kick to it. And George will say, well, the fans like it the way it is. And I'm like, well, I don't want to take that away. I'd like to put out like a double album or whatever
Yeah.
that has then and now. And
Oh
then
yeah.
people can listen to whichever one they want.
Right.
But Territory, the new mix that TJ did, mind-blowingly good. And like I'm finally proud of something that I've recorded after like 11 albums because I did one with Siren, I did one and a demo with Abandon. Um, we did one and a half with Ass, and then like 8 albums with Halloween. And for me, Territory is like the best sounding of all of them. And plus, like over the years, we evolved a little bit, and we never tried to be like anybody, but we were influenced by everything that's out there. I mean, when we first started out, Rick Craig was influenced by Randy Rhoads and Eddie Van Halen, and I was influenced by bands that I came up seeing on the bar scene in New Jersey, where I grew up.
Uh-huh.
And in fact, What a Nice Place is a cover song by a local bar band out from Long Island, Salty Dog. And so that was my early influence, was going to see Salty Dog and Days and like all these bands that I saw in the clubs when I was first old enough to go into the clubs. And I had a television show similar to what MTV became when they still played music. Um, I had a local cable show where I I would try to get videos from the record labels to play on this show, and there really were none at the time. Like Alice Cooper's "Welcome to My Nightmare" movie
Yeah.
that got sent to me, and a handful of videos when it was just still like a baby step thing. And so what I would do, I'd go and I'd cut up all my Circus and Cream magazines and Hit Parader and wherever I could find pictures of metal bands.
Yeah.
And then I would go into the studio and I would play the records, and I would have two cameras that would just do fades in and out of all this stuff. So
Awesome.
when I was able to finally take the cameras out and go into the clubs, that's when I discovered Salty Dog and Baby Blue and Days and all the. In fact, Days was a local band that was managed by Tom Wally, who ended up being like the top A&R guy. He might even be the president of Capitol Records by now. And he was just a local nobody in the Jersey
Yeah.
Shore scene. But so I discovered Salty Dog, and I became friends with them after putting them on my TV show, and I was there when they were writing and rehearsing. They had a really cool band house on the beach in New Jersey, and I think it was Lavalette or like Point Pleasant Beach. And so when they broke up after some of the members left and whatnot, and What a Nice Place always stuck in my head. And I asked the guys, I said, hey, would it be cool? Eddie Jelly and Paul Veneer were the two writers. And I said, would it be all right if I covered that band, with my, or that song with my band Halloween? And they were like, oh yeah, that would be awesome. And then we recorded it. And most of the people don't even realize that it's a cover song. They think
Yeah.
that
I had no
that it was
idea.
ours. But so I've always been influenced by these other bands, and when Pantera and Slayer and Metallica started coming up, it was just a natural progression for me to kind of just add some heaviness to what we were doing. And
Right.
probably because, like I said about the production on Don't Meddle with Evil, I felt like it really needed something. And then a year later, we went and we recorded Victims of the Night with Pete Bankert out at the schoolhouse in Ann
Oh
Arbor.
yeah. Yeah.
And we didn't get that kick in the gut from that album either. And so I think by the time we recorded Vicious Demo and No One Gets Out, I was longing for that like aggression.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so those songs just kind of naturally progressed. And plus when Rick and Bill left, and then we got Tommy Stewart, who went on to be a rock star 7 times over, and Billy Gray was in the band. And then we did the Vicious Demo, which wasn't supposed to be a demo; it was supposed to be a full album.
Oh, okay.
Um, but we ended up going on tour with Crimson Glory, and we didn't have anything new with the current guys. So we just grabbed 5 of the songs that we recorded and put out a cassette and called it Vicious Demo. But we had like a whole plan for that. There's, I think there's like 6 or 7, at least 5 other songs that were supposed to go on that, and it was going to be called Vicious Demonstration. And it was around the time when all the church groups and the government
Oh
was,
yeah.
shitting all over heavy metal bands. And so what it was going to be a bunch of long-haired heavy metal dudes with picket signs outside of a church where the preacher was like burning records and whatnot. And that
Awesome.
wasn't going to be the album cover, but we had to hurry up and put something out, so we just shortened it to Vicious Demo and put those 5 songs out. And then after that tour, um, Tommy wanted to, make some money, and he joined Cody Lee uh, up in Flint, where he was from, and they went out and they did like like the cover band,
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
Class A circuit or whatever, and shit, Jeff Blando from Vince Neil and Slaughter was the guitar player in Cody Lee, and they were playing a show in Atlanta at the Metroplex, and they opened for Lillian Axe, and Lillian Axe had just started a tour, and Gene Barrett, their drummer, left the band to go join John Oliva's Dr.
Oh,
Butcher band.
oh wow.
And so they asked Tommy right on the spot. They saw how good of a drummer it was. They asked him, "Hey, do you want to finish this tour with us? Because our drummer just split, and we just started the tour, and he just like up and left us in the middle of the tour."
Oh my
And so
God.
Tommy left Cody Lee and went on and was in Lillian Axe, and then he was a founding member of Godsmack. And so, we were always proud that he started with, local Flint bands and then Halloween.
Yeah.
But then we were back to the drawing board because right after he left, Billy ended up taking a leave of absence, and we got Donnie Allen and Tim Wright. And I mean, they were like just slammers. Tim was into Slayer,
Yeah.
and Donnie was into Obituary and bands like that. So of course the music got heavier, and because I'm a fan of anything that rocks, I went along with it.
Right, right.
Yeah, so we kind of progressed along the way. But in the last two albums, Territory and Horror Fire, we also didn't forget our roots. We brought back songs like Caught in the Webs, that's on Territory, was one of the first songs that Halloween ever did, like back in the early 80s.
Oh, really?
And on Horror Fire, same with Nobody's Home and Candles. So we would bring songs from back then and kind of bring them into the current albums just to
Yeah.
kind of keep it true.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I don't know this story, and I'm hoping you can tell me. So how did Halloween start? How did the band get formed?
Well, I was married to the mother of my daughter, and we were both from the East Coast. She was from New York, and I was from New Jersey. And her family moved to the suburbs in New Jersey to just get away from the city life. And I met her. We both lived in small towns that neighbored each other. And her dad worked for General Motors in New York City. And right after we started dating, General Motors closed down their financial division in Manhattan and moved everybody out here to Michigan to the GM Tech Center in Warren.
Oh,
And her family was strict Catholics, and they said, well, either you guys break up or get married because you can't come with us and she can't stay unless you're married. So we were kind of forced into getting married, and we weren't really wanting that or ready for that. But we ended up getting married, and we stayed in New Jersey. Her family moved out here, and I ended up losing my job because of the aforementioned Salty Dog Band. What happened was because they did my show so many times, um, I checked with my supervisor and I gave them free cable and HBO because I worked for a cable company.
uh-huh.
And then our little mom and pop cable company was sold to Time Warner, and the big guns came in and they did an audit of the system. Well, the day that I gave them the free cable, I didn't climb the pole and put a blue tag on their drop line saying that they were supposed to have HBO and the full cable service. And this is the early days of cable TV.
Yeah, yeah.
And anyway, they did this audit, and the reason I didn't put the tag on was because we were having a nor'easter storm that day, and I didn't want to put my ladder up. It was really high up on the pole, and I didn't want to climb the pole in my hooks because it was just shitty weather. So I left it and forgot about it. Well, when push came to shove, my boss got called in about it, and he had to call me in, and he came to me and he goes, "Look," he goes, "I know that I authorized this, but they're being, heavy-handed about cable theft, and so it's either you or me. And I'm like, well, that's not cool. And
Yeah.
he goes, I'll give you a good recommendation wherever you go, but I can't keep you here. And I'm
Yeah.
like, but I didn't do anything wrong. Anyway, I lost my job, which sucked because I was moving up the ladder. I went from just being a lowly installer to kind of a local celebrity on my TV show. Like I said, I was doing
Yeah.
MTV before MTV. And then I moved up to like a technician, and then I was on a construction crew, and boom, now my job's gone. Well, my ex-wife was making $800 a month phone calls to her mom every day
Oh,
back
man.
when you didn't
Yeah.
have free calling. And I ended up getting another job at another cable company, and I got laid off there. And I'm like, well, I can't keep doing this. And so we looked into moving to Michigan, and because of Kiss writing Detroit Rock City, I thought, well, if Kiss wrote a song about it, it's got to be a cool place. So boom, we packed up a U-Haul and moved out here, and ended up living with her family until neither one of us could take it anymore. And then we split up several times. And one of the times that we tried to get back together, she ended up, in fact, not to get too graphic, but I know the night that my daughter was conceived, it was the night of Kiss, Cheap Trick, and New England at Pontiac Silverdome.
Oh,
And
awesome.
the way I know that is because the only time that her and I were together, and the math adds up because that was July 13th, and she was born April 30th the following year. And I'm like, yep, 9 months on a button. And it never worked out. We tried a couple of times to make it work for our daughter, but we just weren't meant to be together. And so here I am in Detroit, with a new baby, and going through a divorce. And I ended up in a band called Mesmerized out in Shelby Township. And from that, I ended up in a band Alcatraz. And Rick Craig and Mark Scott, who is Halloween's, well, yeah, Bitch and Halloween's first drummer, they saw me sing with Alcatraz at the Ritz in Roseville, and they were like, "We're putting a band together, and you are our front man." So
Awesome.
the three of us set out to find a drummer and a bass player, and we got this guy named Ed Payton who had just moved back from L.A. and played with Rat and Dokken and all these bands that were from the L.A. scene
Right.
when they weren't even signed yet. They were just bar bands in L.A. And he was in and out of all these bands. In fact, when he started playing with Bitch, he brought a copy of the first Dokken album, which was a French import, and it had the studio version of Paris is Burning on it.
Oh, wow.
And we learned Breaking the Chains, and we were playing it before, like a year before it came out here in the States, a year and a half, I think it was. And so Ed was our bass player. And then we got this guy named Phil Kaput that came out and auditioned, and he was a really nice guy, but he didn't fit the band. He couldn't play our style. He was more of like an AC/DC. He was like
Yeah.
an in the pocket drummer, but he wasn't ready for double bass and heavier stuff. But he brought us food, and we were living in a basement with hardly any food, and he brought us all McDonald's. So even though he didn't get the gig, we couldn't tell him that night because his mom dropped him and all of his drums off. So he ended up in the band for 2 days because he fed us, and we felt really bad letting him go. But next up was Chuck Burns from Seduce.
Oh, yeah.
Mickey St. Clair was still playing drums for Seduce at that time, and Chuck and Mickey were roommates. And Chuck came out and auditioned. He actually got the gig and was our first drummer. And we were rehearsing, getting ready to play shows, and we went to see a band at the Falcon Lounge. And Ronnie Vanderlip, who ended up being the lead singer for Heaven's Wish, was a drummer back then, and he had like the full John Bonham, the clear orange Ludwig
Oh,
drums with
yeah.
big kettle drums.
Yeah.
He had the whole Bonham kit. Anyway, he was a big shit talker back then, and him and Rick knew each other from the growing up. Well, not growing up, but hanging out on the east side. And Ronnie saw us, had seen us rehearse, and went around the bar telling everybody that he was going to be our new drummer. And one of the people that he told was Chuck. Nobody told him he was going to be our drummer. So the next rehearsal, Chuck came over to practice, and he wouldn't talk to any of us. And we're like, dude, what's up? He wouldn't say a word. He started taking his drums out, and we're like, what is going on right now? He never told us.
Oh,
It
really?
it took us months to figure out what was going on. And wouldn't you know it, because now we need a drummer, Rick calls his buddy Ronnie Vanderlip. So Ronnie ends up in the band, which makes Chuck think that that was the plan.
True. Yeah.
Like, who in their right mind would fire Chuck Burns,
Yeah.
right? But that's how that went down.
Oh, that's crazy.
Before Chuck left, we talked about band names, and I had pictures of naked girls from Hustler and Playboy and all that all over the walls of this basement. And then it was towards the end of October, so I hung Halloween decorations all over the place. So when people would come over to see us rehearse, it looked like a stage show.
Yeah.
And even when we picked the name, Rick says, "Well, it's October. You got all these decorations up. Why don't we call the band Halloween?" Well, Chuck said no, because he knew that Seduce was writing a song called Halloween, and he goes, "Well, how's that going to look if I go back and tell Mickey that, yeah, we named the band Halloween right after they started writing the song Halloween?" So he flat out was completely against it. And one day we were walking through Hazel Park, and Mark, um, who ended up being our drummer for a short time, but he was playing guitar. It was him and Rick on guitar as a duo. Um, but he was equally talented on guitar and drums. And when we kept going through drummers, he ended up being our first drummer. But we were walking through Hazel Park, and dude, we used to walk around with our hair ratted up, on jewelry, makeup, and we're walking down John R. And this pickup truck full of rednecks starts honking a horn and whistling out the window, thinking we were a pack of girls walking down the street. And Mark had a mustache, so when they got past us and saw that we were dudes, then they started yelling fags, and they wanted to turn around and fight us. So
Yeah.
when we got back to the house, Mark says, "Well, shit, why don't we just call the band bitch, since we look like girls that would kick your ass?" Which is funny, because then Motley Crue said something similar to that years, like
Right.
after that. But so we called the band bitch, and we were bitch, the heavy metal horror show, because of all the Halloween decorations. And after Ronnie was in the band, Randy Gacky played drums, and Chad Smith from Chili Peppers came out and auditioned, and we
Oh,
gave him the gig, but all of his cymbals were broke, and he lived in Pontiac, and his mom brought him down to the audition, and he loved us, and I mean, dude, he was a monster on the drums.
yeah.
And we were like, "Well, how do we make this work?" And he's like, "I don't know." And I think he thought we were gonna, like, like, throw some money in to help
Yeah.
him buy cymbals and get a ride or something. But we were broke as hell, so we couldn't do anything. And so that didn't work out. And like a month later, he ended up in Toby Red.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
then at one point, like after we were Halloween, me and George were at somebody's party after a show, and they had the Tonight Show on, and Jay Leno was like, "Put your hands together for the Red Hot Chili Peppers." And so we're watching, they're doing Higher Ground, and I'm like, "Holy shit, Chad's playing drums for this band on the Tonight Show." We couldn't believe it. It was so awesome. But,
That's
um,
crazy.
so anyway, we were Bitch for almost a year, and then Bitch in LA came out. And we're
Yeah.
like, fuck, now we got to change the name. And we said, well, Chuck ain't playing with us no more. Fuck it, let's just go with our original choice, Halloween. So, because we're like, we know that we weren't trying to steal Seduce's idea.
Right.
So, um, we decided to change the name. But instead of telling everybody that we were going to change the name, we told everybody that Bitch was going away. And so we booked a show at the Falcon as the final show for Bitch. and we had a pretty good following. We had started to get like a good crowd,
Hmm.
and everybody was bummed out that we were going to break up, and they fell right into our trap because what we did, we had a brand new Halloween banner behind the bitch backdrop, and we booked the show on Halloween, but we didn't go on until midnight every night. So we're like, well, we want to become Halloween on Halloween. So we made sure that we went on stage at 2 minutes to midnight. And again, this was before Iron Maiden came out with that album. And and I got on the mic and I said, "Well, I know you guys are bummed out that we're not going to be playing around anymore as bitch." I go, "But from now on, we're called Halloween." We ripped down the bitch backdrop and we started the show. We became Halloween on stage on Halloween night and haven't
Damn,
let our foot off the gas since.
that's awesome. That is so awesome. So 40 years, and you guys. So this year you've been doing. I mean, you've the band's been working for a long period of time, but this year you've been doing a bunch of different celebrations. You've had recently like Fan Jam. You did. You guys were out in Germany. You did a show in Mexico.
Well, the
Um,
Mexico show didn't happen.
oh, it didn't.
No, and
Oh,
I wish it had, but I'll get into that a little bit in a second. But yeah, we did Germany. We did halfway to Halloween at the Token because we wanted to do one on each side.
yeah.
Then we did the 40th anniversary at Harpo's,
Harpo's.
and then we just did 2 nights Fan Jam this past weekend. What happened with the Mexico show? We were scheduled to play a festival in Mexico last year, and the Mexican government was still dealing with COVID restrictions, and the promoter got in touch with us and said that they capped their attendance for the festival at 300 people. Um, we saw a video, and there was more like 3,000 people there.
Yeah.
But I think what they did was they capped the pre-sales at 300 people, and they weren't sure who was going to turn up at the door, and they ended up canceling us and I believe it was two other American bands because they said, well, we can't afford to pay all these bands if we don't get the people through the door.
Right.
And we started getting letters from fans in South America and Mexico that were looking forward to come to see us, and they were told that we canceled, but we didn't cancel. And so at the end of last year, this new promoter got in touch with us and said, "Look, we heard about what happened, in the summertime, how you guys were postponed from playing that festival. They never said that we weren't going to come back and do something else with them, but
Yeah.
we haven't heard from them again." And so they said, "Well, we want to do it right. We want to have you guys. We're going to do a festival. It's called Life After Death Horror Fest, and it's going to be not only heavy metal bands, but it's going to be 3 days of heavy metal bands, and we're going to bring in actors from horror movies,
Oh
and we're
wow.
going to have like a haunted house and an art show and all this stuff that was going to go with it." And and they told us some of the bands that were going to play. And originally, Sabotage, Danzig, Ministry, and Queensryche were the first four bands that they told us. And then they added Alice Cooper. So that was the five bands that were supposed to play it. I don't know what happened with Sabotage and Danzig and Ministry, um, because we looked at tour schedules and all of those bands were on tour and were available to go to Mexico. So I don't know if there was like a price thing.
Yeah.
And Sabotage has a new album coming out in the spring. So it only made sense that they would do a show or a tour to
Right.
promote the new album. And we figured, I think I know what happened with Sabotage because it got moved to December, and that's when TSO is
Those
touring
type of
for all
things.
the
Yeah.
Christmas stuff.
Yeah.
So that probably complicated it, but I don't know what happened with Danzig and Ministry. But anyway, I mean, we were thrilled that Alice Cooper was going to do it. And so, we're getting closer and closer to the date. Rob, our drummer, never got vaccinated for COVID. Neither did I. but he adamantly said he was not going to get the vaccine. And I said,
Right.
well, I'm not going to get it unless I absolutely have to. And they slowly started backing off on the restrictions. That's how we were able to go to Germany in April. Um, but it was too late. Rob's passport had expired. So we took Jason Hartless with us, Ted
Yeah.
Nugent's drummer, and the guy that you jammed with when you came out to play with Massive Heart Attack, which became Ass.
Yeah.
And he was just a kid at the time. Now he's like a full grown rock star. But we took Jason with us, and Jason was going to go and play this Mexico show too because some weird shit happened. We had a backup drummer, Chris Buchek, and there was a pretty huge misunderstanding with him, and he ended up quitting and hating us. And somehow we're always the bad guys. But we ended up with Johnny V. I don't know if you know him. He's been in a zillion bands, but we
Oh
had
yeah.
him
Yeah.
as a backup to Rob, and but he's still learning songs and wasn't ready to go. And Jason is best friends with, well, one of his best friends is Casey Grillo from Camelot, who's playing drums for Queensryche, and we were going to be on the same day with Queensryche and Alice Cooper. So Jason was like, "Hey, I would love to go and do that show." So we were going to
Right.
take him, and Johnny was going to go too, and we might have thrown Johnny up to do a song or two, but he wasn't ready to do like the full
The whole
show.
yeah.
And plus, it doesn't hurt your resume to have Ted Nugent's drummer on board with you.
Right. Right.
So we're all set to go. We've got our plane tickets, we've got our motel reservations. It's all good. I believe a week and a half out, we start seeing a bunch of static on the website the for the festival, and we're getting closer and closer, and we're not hearing any final itinerary. Like we don't even know how long our set is, or what
Right.
time we go on, or what the transportation situation is. Plus, we wanted to make sure because they were going to fly us in on the 30th of November and fly us home on the 5th of December. Well, we were playing on the 2nd. So now we're going to be in Mexico for 5 days.
Right.
They were only going to feed us the day of our performance and drive us to and from the airport and to and from our gig. Well, what are we going to do in Mexico City for
For
five
four.
days with no
Yeah.
food and no way around?
Right.
So we got in touch with the promoter and we said, well, look, we'd like to at least go and see the other 2 days of the festival. I mean, that's the least you can do,
Right. Yeah.
get us there and back. So we're not just sitting in a hotel room. And they agreed to do that. And then the very next day, we got a message saying that the festival had moved from one location that they were going to do it at, which does festivals all the time, but they were expecting 50,000 people at our festival. And I guess the people, the locals, didn't like the idea of a festival that big in their neighborhood and
Oh,
the commotion.
yeah.
So it got moved to a different site, and the government told them that it would be ready by December. And just speculation on my part, I think somebody didn't pay somebody off because all of a sudden the site is still under renovation. It's not ready.
Oh.
And so the whole thing was postponed. And I mean, we figured we were just kind of getting, put on the back burner because we're not Alice Cooper or
Right.
Wasp
Right.
or Lita Ford or whatever. But it turns out that like everybody, kind of
Yeah.
got screwed.
Oh
And
man.
so now they're talking about rescheduling it, but trying to get all of those acts. They don't want to lose anybody. They already paid deposits to all of us.
Oh,
And they asked us, well, if we have to break it up into like 10 different shows, what is your preference? And I told our agent Debbie, I said, we want Alice Cooper and Lizzie Borden, or I mean, not
yeah.
nothing. We'll do whatever. But that was like the feather in our cap, is to play with Alice Cooper
Right.
and to play for fans in Mexico and South America, because we have a lot of people down there that follow the band. And and it's like either that or get us on with Wasp. And not to sound you know egotistical or whatever, but it's like almost every other band on that festival could potentially come to Harpo's or the Token Lounge or Diesel or whatever.
Right.
And it might take a little arm twisting, but I think that if we picked up the phone and showed the flyer that we were supposed to play with these bands, we could probably get on a show with just about any of those other bands. I
Yeah,
mean,
for sure.
Halloween already played with Lita Ford. We already played with Doro. We played with Armored Saint. We played with Lizzie Borden. So, and we played with Queensryche 2 or 3 times. So, the appeal was Alice Cooper, KK's Priest, Wasp.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's what we would like to do, but we're waiting to hear
Waiting
back
to hear
from them. We
back.
don't know if it's going to be a festival or a smaller show, but so
Uh,
that got delayed. And I know we postponed this interview till after that so we could talk about it. And when I'm
and then
talking
it didn't.
about it
Yeah.
as it didn't happen. But Germany
Oh,
was awesome.
well,
The
yeah.
fan zone was fun.
Yeah. So tell me about Germany. How was that? Have you guys been there
Germany was
before?
cool. We first went over there in 2004 and did Keep It True when I think it was only the third year of the festival.
Uh-huh.
It was one day, and now it's 3 days, and no, actually it's 4 days now because they do like a pre-show festival on Thursday. Um, and it was very cool. I mean, we got to play with Sodom, which was one of TJ's favorite bands, and we met a lot of really cool bands that are like kind of up and coming.
Yeah.
We hung out with the guys from Fifth Angel. They were at the same hotel with us, and I was a big fan of them. I was bummed that we didn't get to run into Ken Mary because again, Jason and Ken know each other. They've
Uh-huh.
never met, but they've crossed paths and talked online.
Right.
Um, but it was really cool. I mean, we played to a packed house, and I mean, it's fun being in Germany. We toured over there, and we played Keep It True in 2004. Then we did Headbangers Open Air in 2007. 2009, we did Sword Brothers Festival. In 2012, we did a little mini tour where we played 12 shows in 12 days. We went to Belgium, the Netherlands, and all over Germany.
Awesome.
And then now we went back this year
That's
for Keep It
fantastic.
True the second time. It was great.
Excellent. And look like I mean I think there was video from that because I remember
Yeah,
checking in and
it's on
yeah.
YouTube still. If you put a link up, people can check it out.
Yeah, yeah, I will. I'll definitely do that in the show notes. And then I saw that Fan Jam. So what was with well, how was what is the how was that?
Jam Jam was something that started in 2003. Um, Before we went to Germany the first time, I uh, I ended up rupturing a disc in my back and had to have surgery. And prior to surgery, I think it was August of that year, we were offered a show with Damien at Centennial Terrace down in Toledo, in Sylvania, and it was like a comeback show for Damien. And
Yeah.
Rob had been Damien's drummer. He played on the Angel Juice album, and so it was kind of a big deal to do it. But I could not stand up and sing. I had like severe pain shooting, like it was like being struck by lightning
Oh
every
man.
time I would like turn the wrong way or sit up, or if I try to hit a note powerfully.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was crippling. And but so the band kept practicing, hoping that somehow we'd be able to do this show because it meant a lot, especially to Rob. So they were practicing the music, and I'm laying in bed upstairs in my building in Hazel Park. The apartment was above the practice area, and I realized, wow, I can sing laying down, no problem. I can belt out the notes and everything, but I couldn't stand up and do it because of the weight of my body on my lower back.
Right.
So we were getting ready to create like a graveyard scene so that I could lay down and sing this show and it would still fit with the stage show idea.
Right.
Um, and then I went in 3 times for these epidural shots, and the first two didn't work, and the third one was 3 days before the Damien show, and we never, because I couldn't really do any construction, we didn't build the graveyard thing. But I thought, well, I can lay in a casket. We can, prop
Yeah.
it up somehow. Well, it's a good thing that that didn't happen because Damien left us like literally like 3 feet in front of the drums. Um, their drum kit was so far forward that I barely had room to stand in front of Rob. But anyway, the third epidural shot worked, and I was able to sing the show and pain free. And then like 2 days later, it was back with a vengeance. It
Oh
was so
man.
bad.
Ah.
And so that show happened in August, and because of my pain level and I hadn't had surgery yet, um, we couldn't do a Halloween show, our annual show. So what we did was we threw a rehearsal at my building, and we invited 50 people on MySpace back then to come
Yeah.
out, and like 130 people showed up, and we just called it Fan Jam, and we basically played for 4 hours. It was the kind of thing where everybody was like, well, how about this song? And Rob
Yeah.
would be like, yeah, I can get through that. And then we would fumble through it. And, well, do you know this song? Nope, but fuck it, let's do it anyway. And so we would. We played 4 hours. We played like everything we could possibly think of, cover tunes, all the Halloween stuff.
Yeah.
And Rob was still fairly new in the band at that time. So for him to just like fake his way through most of these songs was pretty awesome. But towards the end, George and I were doing an acoustic song, "Take Me," which I still do with my acoustic project. And I look over to my left, and in our doorway is like 7 Hazel Park cops. And I was going to stop the song, and they were like, "No, no, no, keep going. It sounds great." So we finished the song, and we took a break, and I went over and I found out that my landlord, who was also my boss at the strip club that I DJ'd at, did not have a certificate of occupancy for the building. So when the cops saw all the people milling around outside and all the cars parked nearby, they thought it was a rave in a vacant
Ah,
building.
right.
They had no idea that the entire Halloween warehouse was in there and that I was living upstairs. So the cop said, well, unbelievably, this could be the first time in history there's nobody drinking out in the parking lot. There's no drugs. Nobody's pissing on the neighbor's
Right.
yard. Like everybody's orderly. Like, how could this possibly be? There's like 100 people milling around your building,
Right.
and nobody's doing anything wrong. So we can't write any tickets. However, you are going to get a visit from the building inspector, the fire marshal, the code enforcement guy, all this shit. And sure enough, they showed up the following Wednesday, and they flagged my building for, and I was renting from my boss. I think I had like two electrical outlets that didn't have wall covers on them.
Yeah.
And there was a sink in one of the bathrooms that was laying on the floor. Somebody had taken it off the wall and not put it back on. And there was some drop ceiling in one of the office rooms that was not, you know, all the
Yeah.
squares weren't up there. And they condemned the fucking building over like five violations. And my boss, my landlord, said that he wasn't doing anything to fix any of that. And so I'm sitting in my room watching the local cable channel where they are bidding on demolition crews to come and demolish the building that I'm living in. And every piece of Halloween history is in this building.
Oh my God.
And week after week, there's people trying to undercut and underbid on the job. And that's the only reason that they didn't give the job out the very first week and demolish it with all my stuff in it.
Oh,
Um,
shit.
and I managed to talk one of the guys that was on our crew and managing us at the time. He worked at Triangle Electric in Madison Heights, and they had four empty semi trailers that normally go out on job sites when they're doing like a commercial build,
Right.
and these semi trailers were all empty. And he paid his boss a little pocket change, side
Yeah.
money
Yeah.
to let me put all this stuff. And so the entire Halloween stage show and all my personal belongings went into these
Into
four unlocked semi
semis.
trailers in a parking lot in Madison Heights, and they stayed there. And a friend of my daughter, who also happened to be a fan of Halloween, um, lived out in Ypsilanti, and she said that I could come, that she had a spare room, I could come live in the spare room. And then she took out a second mortgage on her house and built this massive garage on her property to bring everything out to.
Holy cow.
And I ended up moving everything out of these semi trailers just in time for the garage to be built and just in time before those trailers had to go out on a commercial build. I mean, by the skin of my teeth, I just
Yeah.
barely got everything out.
Oh
And
my God.
Brian, our manager at the time, his boss was, like pushing every day. I need these trucks. I need these
Yeah.
trucks.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we're trying to put a roof and walls on this garage
Slapping it up.
and
Come
help
on.
build it.
Right.
And for a little while, we had a lot of our stuff out in her yard, in the backyard, with like blue tarps over top of it in the wintertime. So there's snow on top of the
Oh
tarps. And when the
man.
snow melted, like we had a couple of plastic storage totes that had fan mail from Japan and Mexico and Brazil, and water got into these storage totes. And
Oh.
I had to lay all these letters from fans out on the grass in the sun to
Right.
dry them off.
Oh,
And some of the writing was smeared, but I still have the letters. They're here in the building I'm in now.
oh, crazy.
Um, but yeah, it was insane. And then I ended up living in Ypsilanti for 11 years, and I thought I was going to be there forever. And this girl was like trying to trying to make us be a couple, and I'm like, look, I'm not interested in a girlfriend, and you're my daughter's friend, and I'm happy just being a roommate here.
Right.
She kept pushing for the girlfriend thing and trying to make me jealous, and she would like go on dates with Razor Ray and like all these dudes that I knew to try to make me jealous. I'm like, look, I don't care if you bang guys on the coffee table in the living room while I'm watching a Lions game. I don't care. I don't want to be your boyfriend. Like I look at you more like a sister.
Yeah.
Uh, anyway, she ended up writing to some dude that was in prison and ended up marrying the guy. And when he
Crazy.
came along, he wanted me out because
Yeah.
he didn't want some dude living in the house where he just got married to this
Right.
girl. And so I got in touch with Ted Palviti, who I'm sure you know also.
Yeah.
He saw a Facebook post where I was looking for a building or a pole barn, and he's like, "Well, I might have the perfect place." And so I ended up becoming like building mates with him here in Milan.
Nice.
And so it's been a crazy ride, crazy
That's for sure,
ride.
man. Holy crap. That's crazy. So, Brian, you guys have like this intense catalog of tunes, and I know this is going to be like a hard question to ask, but do you have any like favorites that you just love to play?
I do, but I just realized that I didn't finish on what happened with Fan Jam this past weekend.
Oh yeah, go for
Yeah.
it.
So anyway, the Fan Jam was born at my building in Hazel Park, and then it kind of went away. And then last year, here at my building in Milan, which is why I brought that up, my girl and I decorated the practice area in my building for like 2 weeks with all the Halloween props that we take to all of these stage
Yeah.
shows and a bunch of Christmas stuff because like Halloween's my jam and Christmas is hers. We spent 2 weeks decking this place out, and we decided, you know what, we're going to resurrect the Fan Jam and do it here last December. And then we start hearing stories about this ice storm that was going to happen, and it's getting closer and closer, and the ice storm is gonna happen. Like the weatherman's not going to be wrong this time.
Right, right.
And sure enough, it's getting closer, and the next thing you know, 4 or 5 days before the Fan Jam was supposed to happen here, Rob's wife Andrea had a massive heart attack.
Oh man.
And we were like, oh no, well, we can't have a Halloween Fan
Yeah,
Jam without Halloween.
right.
And I had asked Chris Buchek, who was our backup, if he would come out and do it. Well, originally it was going to be Chris and Rob taking
Tag
turns
teaming.
jumping
Yeah.
in. And I think Chris didn't want to do it with Rob, so he told me that he was going to be out of town on vacation, which I kind of checked around, and I don't think he went on vacation. I think he just didn't want to
Didn't
do
want to
it.
do it. Yeah.
So Johnny V, who was playing with my cover band, I was like, Johnny, can you hurry up and learn like at least five Halloween songs?
Yeah.
So he crammed and he learned a bunch of songs, and so we were going to do it, and then the ice storm happened. So there was no fan jam. We had 100 people. We put out an invite for like 50 people, and 100 people signed up, and I'm like, well, the heat doesn't work over there. At least if there's 100 people, it'll be
It'll be
warm.
warm.
Um, but so it didn't happen. And then because Johnny learned those songs, we did a benefit for Jeff Davey, who basically ran the Emerald and Freedom Hill and like a bunch of Joe Newport venues.
Uh-huh.
Um, and he had some health issues, so we did a benefit for him. It was a freebie. We only did like a handful of songs on a Sunday, like earlier this year. That was another show that we did besides going to German. In fact, it was before German. And and since Johnny learned these songs for the fan jam, I was like, dude, you just want to come and play them at this benefit? Like we're
Yeah.
not getting paid, but you took the time to learn the songs, come do it. So I announced that we were doing this benefit for Jeff Davey, and I put it on Facebook. Well, I hadn't said anything to Chris Buchek, and Chris read it, and he goes, "I can't believe you guys. Like, what am I, chopped liver? Like,
Oh
I'm your
man.
backup drummer, and I've been playing with the band for the last couple of years, and screw you guys.
Oh, that's a
Don't ever
bummer.
call me again. I'll never be there." And I'm like, dude, like we're just
Uh,
throwing this guy a bone. Like we're
yeah.
not replacing you. But by then there was
It,
blood in the water and it
yeah.
was
It's
fucked
too
up.
late.
So
Yeah.
now Johnny's the backup. Because and the whole reason for that is because Rob needs
Yeah.
knee surgery. So anyway, so fast forward to this year, George is now a partner out at the Richmond Rock Room, which is just this loft over top of a construction company. And he said, well, since we didn't get to do Fan Jam last year, let's do it out there. And the reason it became 2 days is because they have a strict occupancy
Oh,
rule there,
right. How
and
many
Richmond
people? Right.
can only have 49 people, including the band and crew and the
Oh,
people that are working there. So we could only invite like 20 or 25 people.
yeah.
And so we did Friday and Saturday. And, true to form for Halloween, we ended up having some technical problems because they hadn't fired up the PA system. And TJ's dad, Tony, brought out his digital board and tried to mix it with their older amps and cabinets. And I mean, we got through it, but there were some technical issues. And then some people that had won tickets didn't show up because the COVID bug and the
Yeah.
flu and everything else is going around. And so it was a nice little intimate thing. I think if you check my Facebook page, I put a list of all the songs that we did over the
Yeah.
two
I saw
days.
that. Yeah.
It wasn't quite the 4 hour thing that we did with Rob back in Hazel Park, but we got through a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. For
And
sure.
people that showed up dug it, because it was special for them.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
okay, now favorite song.
Yeah.
I
Favorite songs.
love Traipsing Through the Blood off of Territory. That's like one of my very favorites. I still love What a Nice Place. I love Tales from the Crypt. Um, I love Wake Up Screaming and Angel of Evil off of the Evil Pieces EP.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's my top five.
Awesome. Awesome. So Brian, um, I know you mentioned like doing that cable show. Did you ever do anything else with that after? Like once you came to Detroit, did you ever try to do anything like that again?
It's funny because I started to do a show. When I moved here, there was no such thing as cable TV.
Yeah.
Nothing. The closest thing they had was a service called uh, Metro TV 5, which was a microwave TV service that they sent to apartment buildings, and it had a transmitter on the Renaissance Center downtown,
Yeah.
and they would beam a signal to these apartment buildings and then run to like a master antenna system in the apartment buildings. Um, and they could get HBO and a couple of premium services, and that was it. So I worked for them for a minute, and then I don't know if you're old enough or if they even had it out on the west side or if you've always lived where you're at now, but there was a service that came along after Metro TV called On Subscription TV.
Yeah, on TV. I
Yeah, it
remember
was
that.
on Channel 20 and it was a
Yeah.
similar type of thing. And I worked for them for a while because there was no cable TV.
Yeah.
And then as soon as cable started to come to the Detroit area, it was Cox Communication out of Atlanta, COX Cox.
Yeah.
Um, I ended up working there, and I had to start back at the beginning. I'm like, dudes, not only have I been an installer, but I was a tech, and I went through all the phases.
Yeah.
But they started me as an installer, and the other guys that I worked with, they had no idea because it had never been around here before. So I'm doing 7 installs before 11 o'clock in the morning, and the other guys that I worked with are struggling to do two in an 8 hour day, and they're all getting mad at me because I'm like wiping the floor with them. And needless to say, I started moving up there. Same thing. I became a technician, and then I got into the construction end of it because we started in St. Clair Shores and then branched out to Fraser and then all the Grosse Points. In fact, I was in every backyard in those cities, all the Grosse Points, St. Clair Shores, and Fraser, because I ended up becoming a construction supervisor and overseeing the construction of all of those cities.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, I brought up the fact that I had done a cable show in New Jersey, and so they built a studio in St. Clair Shores, and I started doing a cable show here. And it was right around the time that Howard Stern came to W4 downtown, and he was doing the wrestling women out in front of the studio in Jefferson Avenue and all that
Right.
stuff. So I got in touch with the station, and his producer Stephen Blum got in touch with me, and he wanted to come and do a cable show. He was all about it.
Yeah.
And so the very first night that I got to work with Howard Stern, he excused himself as we were doing prep to start shooting our very first show. It was called On the Air. It was the name of the show in Jersey. It was Jersey's Best Rock.
Uh,
Um, and he excused himself. And when he came back in the room, he went over to his producer and he said that something came up, an emergency, and he had to leave. And I was like, oh man, what the hell? Like I was so geeked to work
right.
with Howard.
Right.
And after he left, the producer said, yeah, Howard just got some bad news. And I thought it was like a death in the family or,
Right.
wife was sick or something. No, W4 changed over to country music and he was freaking out, didn't know what he was going to do because he was a shock jock. It
Right.
doesn't work with country.
Right.
And in fact, him and Podell were there, and so was John O'Leary. Like all the big Detroit jocks were all at W4 at the time.
Yeah.
John O'Leary had come over from ABX, and so anyway, needless to say, the show never worked with Howard because like 2 weeks later, he was
He was
in Washington D.C. doing
right.
another station and I did my show for a little while, and I filmed some bands around here, and then I got the back injury that I
Oh,
talked
right.
about. It
Right.
happened
Right.
when I was working with cable, and I ended up in a workman's comp situation, and I ended up not working there anymore. I couldn't work
Yeah.
because I was hurt,
Yeah.
and we ended up suing them, for my doctor bills. And of course, they erased all my tapes from my TV show, everything, all
Oh.
the bands were in, because I had gone out and I filmed the Almighty Strut,
Oh,
and
awesome.
I filmed, and that was back when Jack Black was still in the band, the dude with the top hat and
Yeah.
spinning
Yeah.
the cane and everything, and I filmed Bolts, that was another band from the East Side. I filmed Bittersweet Alley.
Oh,
I
Bittersweet Alley.
filmed
Yeah.
I filmed Adrenaline, which became DC Drive. I filmed Sparks, which became Seduce.
Oh man,
All those tapes got erased
gone.
because we were in a lawsuit with them. They just wiped everything clean. And we had a test before Howard got that phone call. We did a couple of
With
test
him?
shoots with him, just
Oh,
reading some copy and all of it. Like they were like, "Fuck
gone.
you," and they just erased all of my shit.
Oh my God. What?
So, and that was that. And I mean, I did a couple of interview cable things, but I never got back into being a host
Yeah,
after
yeah,
that.
yeah. Because I think I remember maybe seeing you and Halloween. Because didn't Doug Podell do a show or something on?
Yeah, yeah, we were on the beat several times with
Yeah,
Podell,
yeah, yeah.
and I mean, we did a show called Rock to the Top in 1988, which we still have all five camera shoot reels of that show,
Oh really?
and we also recorded a live album that night with a Metro recording studio, a 48 track
Did
recording studio.
did that
And
ever
in
get
fact,
released?
it never got released. That's with Rick and Bill.
Oh
We did
man.
the whole Don't Meddle with Evil album and like five bonus tracks, and it was going to be called Don't Meddle with Evil Live. And it never got released. Right now, the audio reels are in a studio being burned and digitized, and we converted the video to digital.
Yeah.
And so we're hoping that once we finalize the deal, we're trying to finalize the deal with Jason Hartless's record label. And
Okay.
we're hoping that if that goes through and everything's smooth, that he'll put out this previously unreleased thing and our new album that we've been working on for
Awesome.
several years.
Awesome, man. That'd be cool.
COVID kind of sidelined that.
Yeah, man. Oh man. That would be awesome. Love to see hear that. Plus the new material sounds like that'll be good too. Very cool. Well, Brian, I
Yeah.
want to thank you so much for being on Bands with Bands. I just have one last question, and that is
Okay.
pineapple or no pineapple on pizza?
Well, I'm a pepperoni guy, but I like pineapple, so I'm not opposed to it.
Awesome. Got any favorite toppings that you like must have when you order a pizza?
Pepperoni, ground beef, and I guess I'll try pineapple.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, thanks
Meat and
again.
potatoes guy.
Cool. Happy holidays, and hopefully I'll see you soon. And thanks a lot.
Yeah, hey, we didn't talk about you jamming with me for a minute.
Oh yeah, that's right. That was fun, dude. I was. I'll tell you because I've been a fan of yours for so long. I was super intimidated. I was like, "Fuck! What? I'm here with Brian from Halloween." I was like, "I don't even know what I'm doing here." And I don't know if you remember,
Well,
but my band opened for Halloween and Flint.
Italian, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yep,
When
I
I think that
remember.
was when No One Gets Out uh, was out.
Yeah,
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 and
that would have been around the time.
yeah, 90 and
But
91.
yeah, when we had you come out, it was because Donnie was going through his liver transplant,
Yep.
and uh, and I had just got Jason to come out, and we weren't sure how that was going to go because he was like 14, 13 or 14.
Yeah.
And he was really geeked about playing with Donnie Allen, because of the No One Gets Out stuff.
Yeah.
And so when you came out, like nothing against you, but like we didn't all know the same material.
Right.
And so it was just kind of like, oh well, what do we do? I think we played Baba O'Reilly by the Who
Yeah, we
was
did.
was one of the songs that we tried to do.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Tried to hack
and
through a
I just,
few tunes. And that's when I met Andy. Because I didn't know Andy Furta before. He came
oh
out and
really?
jammed. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought you knew all these Ann Arborites.
No, I didn't know him. I knew Chris obviously, but I didn't know Andy. So yeah, and yeah, it's cool. It was a good
We'll have
time
to
though.
jam together again sometime.
Yeah, that would be fun, man. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Brian. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, for
Appreciate
sure.
it. And people can find Halloween on Facebook, and Um, I'll try to send you a link to my YouTube channel, which
Cool.
has my acoustic hell project. It has my zoo, BFT's The Zoo, which is my Scorpions tribute. It has BFT's DNA, which is my cover band, and then all the Halloween stuff. And I think there's some Siren stuff on there too from when I was singing with Siren.
Oh,
And I
really?
think there's some abandoned stuff. So like my whole history is on my
It's out
YouTube
there.
channel.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. Well, cool, man. Thanks.
All right. Have a good one. Happy holidays and peace.
Many thanks to Brian for joining me in this episode of Fans of Bands. It was a great honor to talk with Brian from the legendary heavy metal horror show Halloween. I've been a fan since 1985 when I picked up their debut, Don't Meddle with Evil. Their music has been a huge influence on me. It was a real treat to learn from Brian how Halloween came to be, get their backstory on recent 40th anniversary shows, and learn about Brian's musical background. Halloween recently reissued their Territory album, which has been remastered for maximum ferocity by TJ Richardson, who plays guitar for Halloween. This remastered album is fantastic. You can get your copy today. See the show notes for all the details and links. Bands are nothing without you, the fans. Purchasing music and merchandise is critical to their survival. If you can help out your favorite bands, please do. If you're in Michigan, consider following the Playing in Detroit area tonight and SE for Southeast Michigan Music Facebook pages. They are fantastic places for fans and bands to support each other and share our combined love of music. Thank you all so much for listening. Be sure to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast service to get each and every episode of Fans with Bands. Spread the word by rating the show, telling your friends, telling your neighbors, telling your family, telling your priest, tell everyone, and leave a comment. We want to hear what you think. You can keep in touch by following us on social media. This is a Life in Michigan production. Until next time, be well and kick out the jam.